At about 9:30 the night of June 10, 1950, the Pan American production company A.L. Holley number 1 in the Reinecke field, Borden County, Texas, caught fire after being out of control for some 30 minutes. At the first plane to nearby Sweetwater was Myron Kinley, world-famous fighter of oil well fires, and Red Adair, his assistant, followed him in by truck. Detailed arrangements were made to rush to the scene a long list of special equipment. Bulldozers to excavate water pits to have a capacity of 50,000 barrels. More than a score of tank trucks to haul water from the Colorado River. Shields for cat and bulldozer drivers, fabricated from corrugated galvanized iron and 1 and 2 inch pipe. Individual protectors for the men working on the ground. Crews of welders for constantly needed fabricating work. A special water-cooled boom and hook rig brought in from Oklahoma, mounted on an AFI wagon from Kermit, Texas, and powered by a Caterpillar tractor from San Antone. No two oil well fires are ever exactly alike, and the needs are always highly specialized and endless in detail. Pumps, discharge line, manifold, and fire hose are needed to bring water to the location so the ground can be cooled as workmen pack in winch lines to drag out various pieces of fiery hot equipment. This was to be the first step in the battle to kill the roaring blaze, for the presence of any red-hot debris would immediately reignite the oil or gas. Led by Myron Kinley and his assistant Red Adair, the men who actually fought the fire came from regular Newman Brothers drilling crews and roustabout gangs. Their courage and skill throughout this most dangerous and difficult operation matched the highest traditions of all men of the oil fields. Piece by piece, loose items such as tanks and automotive equipment were pulled away from the well in a slow, tedious process which made days seem like years. Everything from cement trucks to prime movers for the rig had to come out. Then the hook was moved into the flaming area to grapple for the substructure and other parts of the rig. An extremely difficult task, for the operator must guide all movements by signals to the cat driver, who must operate the equipment in a backward position. Always painfully slow, but with a steadiness that gradually built into progress, the process of clearing away debris continued, each item silently giving its own evidence of the terrific heat. A troublesome ground fire further hampered operations, and as long as the wind blew from its prevailing southerly direction, it was impossible to remove some 7,000 feet of tubing and drill pipe. Close observation indicated that the rotary was in such a position as to divert part of the flow from the well downward before it blazed skyward. It could also be seen that the rotary slips were in place in the master bushing, and until they could be removed, there was little hope of killing the fire. As the clearing operations continued, efforts not photographed took place, and the inaccessible tubing and drill pipe was covered with dirt by using cat specially rigged with extension blades. The heat from such a blaze cannot be overemphasized, and the ability of men to work under such conditions was sometimes unbelievable. Although relief crews had been organized and sleeping quarters set up so the work could go on around the clock, human fatigue occasionally demanded a rest, usually just a short one, but sufficient to revive the cheerful, aggressive spirit so typical of all the men who took part in the operation. Special arrangements were made for food and drink, and it's interesting to note that cold milk quenched thirst more effectively than ice water. A voluntary ambulance, fortunately, was never needed. On the fourth day of the fire, in an effort to jar the rotary table loose, it was decided to use an 80-quart shot of gelatin. An oil drum was fabricated on the end of the boom, and the shot was placed in it to be kept submerged in water. Then came several tense moments as the drum was maneuvered into position under the south edge of the rotary table. With a shot in position and surrounded by fire, the order of the moment was to clear out. When the shot was discharged, it failed to bounce the rotary table out of position or to jar the slips or master bushings loose. So it was necessary to pull the equipment away and start thinking of some other method to knock the stubborn assembly from its position. After on-the-spot conferences, telephone calls, and special efforts on the part of Mr. John Newman, Army personnel came in with a 75mm bazooka, the famous recoilless weapon designed for tank destroying. After several tests, the bazooka was set up about 350 feet away, and a total of 7 shots were fired, the last few of which we see here. The last 2 shots apparently did the job, and in 2 tries with a grappling hook, the rotary was finally removed. Of course, everyone concerned was very appreciative of the Army's successful efforts. Although the shots had given sufficient impact to loosen the rotary assembly, close inspection revealed little damage done. Then came 12 more hours of tedious work to remove the blowout preventers and other debris from around the well opening. With all equipment cleared away, the ground fire was soon eliminated, and the flame began to shoot straight up. You will recall that the tubing and drill pipe near the well could not be removed and was covered with dirt. So on the 10th day of the fire, with the pipe so prepared, a 90-quart shot of gelatin was made ready and preparations got underway. The blaze was partially snuffed out for a fleeting second, but reignited quickly. 2 days later, another shot was tried. Still, the fire burned on, and it was decided that further efforts to shoot the fire out would be futile unless the molten tubing and drill pipe could be removed and the area surrounding the well flooded with water. It was then decided to attempt to place a stack over the 9 5/8 to 10 3/4 inch swedge on top of the casing in the well in an effort to get the flame as high up from the ground as possible and thereby reduce the heat in the immediate area of the well opening. The stack was made of 16-inch conductor pipe and was about 12 feet long. Then began the rugged process of getting the stack into position. This was a most difficult job. Even after it was positioned, the 12-foot stack apparently reduced the velocity of the flow, causing part of the oil to slip downward, creating considerable ground fire. Finally, when the stack was shortened to 8 feet, the ground fire was eliminated. Still, the heat was so intense, the drill pipe could not be removed. However, efforts to throw up a levee around the well were successful, and preparations were made for the next stage of the battle. It was thought that perhaps a stack equipped with a 13 3/8 inch gate valve with 3 4-inch outlets immediately below might be secured to the casing by using an overshot equipped with slips. This necessitated an attempt to remove the swedge from the casing by sawing with a wire line, which was not successful. So a 13 3/8 to 16-inch swedge with welded nut lugs was substituted for the overshot, and the stack was finally positioned over the casing with its lower end forced well into the ground at the bottom of the cellar. Meanwhile, preparations had been made for pumping some 1,500 sacks of cement into the cellar on top of the 16-inch swedge. A 50,000-barrel pit was excavated, and at the same time, 2 100-barrel tanks were made into separators and connected through 3 4-inch lines into a manifold. As the cement was pumped into the cellar, the slurry eventually covered the swedge and the 3 4-inch outlets. These outlets had been connected with 3 4-inch lines leading from the stack to the manifold, completing the hookup to the separators. Although all these lines were opened, there was no flow through them to the tanks in the pit, obviously due to the velocity of the flow toward the top of the stack. Although leakage occurred at the base of the stack, it was stopped temporarily from time to time by pumping in more cement. However, when the gate valve was finally about a quarter closed, oil began leaking badly around the base of the cement plug, and further efforts to control the well in this manner were abandoned. Early the morning of July 5th, mud guns sprayed huge volumes of water to cool the ground in a large surrounding area as a 100-quart gelatin load was prepared in another drum, then positioned with the boom. At 8:15 a.m., the shot was exploded. The fire was extinguished after roaring for 25 days. Previous to this shot, several important events had taken place. A wind shift had allowed the breaking up of the cement plug and its removal, and at the same time, the molten mass of tubing and drill pipe had been broken to bits and pulled from the area. Also, a levee about 100 feet in diameter had been thrown up around the well site, allowing this area to be flooded with water. The decision had been reached, too, that the well was to be capped with a casing head bowl containing split pack-off and slips and to be stripped into position around the casing. This was to be followed by the stripping of 2 spools and a 10-inch pressure-operated valve. After additional work to better condition the surrounding area, to reinforce levees and to get necessary equipment and tools, the process of capping the well continued. An A-frame on a tandem trailer was used to pull the stack from the cellar. Then work was delayed a short time due to the commingling of oil, gas, and water when the wind suddenly died down. However, work soon resumed as the wind came up again, bringing within reason the hazard of asphyxiation. Eventually, a 13 3/8-inch Braden head with 9 5/8-inch split slip and pack-off assembly was stripped over the 9 5/8-inch casing and secured with a clamp bolted to the casing just below the head. Then a plug of cowls to firm position around the assembly for the purpose of supporting the bowl when additional weight was added by stripping the spools and the valve over the flow. Later, a 10-inch gate valve was bolted in position. This activity took place after dark and could not be photographed, but after leaks were corrected, 50 barrels of water were pumped in against 1,200 pound surface pressure, followed by 450 barrels of mud. Final pressure at noon. Today, the Holley No. 1 flows through this same hookup. Serene now, but a rugged memory for a lot of right good oil field hands. Every man who worked there received a certificate, making him a member in the Royal Order of Fire Eaters, and expressing deep appreciation for his services in the heat and the hell at Holley No. 1.